So it's gonna take a lot for me to do this video, but I searched all over YouTube and I wasn't able to find anything recent about this issue, and it's a really big issue. So we're gonna get down and dirty and we're gonna talk about how I'm managing my porn addiction. So I can't see the future, and I don't know what kind of environment you're living in, and I really hope you don't have this problem. But if you do and you feel shame for having this problem, just know that you're not alone. I have it too, and I'm pretty terrified to do this video actually. So I'll be taking my time, because if my friends see it and my family see it and my coworkers sees it, I'm really not sure how I'm gonna respond to that. But I feel like I have to do this video for you if you're in that situation. And to start the story off, we actually have to go back to when I was, I think, 13, 14 years old. I was in 9th grade. And what I remember was that I must have had a fever or something, because I was home alone. My parents and my brother left the house to go to a family dinner or something. And while I was having that fever, I also had a TV in my room. I was very privileged. And so I turned on the TV and I started flipping through channels, and back then we had this thing called like a little black box. And this little black box will allow you to basically steal all the channels, all the PPV. And I think there was an episode on Seinfeld about that. So I got all the channels and I started flipping through it, and I ended up on a naughty channel. So I stayed on that naughty channel for a few minutes, more like half an hour, more like an hour, and lo and behold, the third leg wakes up. And instinctually, I think men just know how to do this, but my hand went and reached for that third leg and I started rubbing it. It felt good. And a couple minutes later, I came. And that was the first time I masturbated. And I didn't even know at that time what masturbation was. So that's how it all started. And over the next few months, whenever my family would leave the house for a family dinner or something, I'd give some lame excuse to stay home and jack off. Now that was a low point, but I didn't really think about it that way because what I was doing felt really good. So let's fast forward some years to high school and university. I don't remember a time where I spent a week without masturbating. Actually, I was doing it daily. And actually, I was doing it multiple times per day, watching porn, masturbating. And for me, porn and masturbation goes hand in hand. You know, you don't just watch porn to watch porn, get a boner and just leave it. You do something with it, right? So I don't know if I was the only one. You know, I have friends, we don't talk about it. If they were doing it too, I have no idea about that. That didn't matter. Because during that whole time, it felt normal. And in fact, back in high school, we had some sex ed classes, right? And two of the presenters of those sex ed classes, I distinctly remember them encouraging masturbation, saying that it was a normal thing. And I saw that as a green light. I saw, okay, if this is normal, then I'm gonna continue doing it. Now in hindsight, I really think that those presenters were the early form of alphabet warriors. But you know what? Every time I went and watched porn and masturbated, I got a high. I loved that feeling, that release of dopamine. But then every single time I did it, I'd immediately felt a crash after like 5 minutes. It was a real productivity inhibitor. So I was doing that bad habit daily, multiple times per day. If someone were doing drugs daily and multiple times per day, what do you call them? You called them a drug addict. But I think at the time, the idea was so novel, was so new, that people didn't know what a porn addict was or what porn addiction looked like. So when I moved to the US for a job, I actually eased up on the porn a lot. I think it was because I moved out of my parents' house, and for the fact that when you live in the US you need a car. So I got a car, and that meant I had freedom now. I could go wherever I wanted to go. I would say that the porn and the masturbation went from a daily habit to more of a couple of days to a week habit. So I was abstaining for that length of time. But at the same time, I also started taking dance classes, because if you're a guy and you're wondering how to meet women, dance classes are the best way, in my opinion, to meet women. And when I started doing those dance classes, I also got into doing dance competitions. And those dance competitions would happen all across the country in different states. So there was a lot of travel time, and I would also be sharing hotels with 3 other people, because as dancers, you know, you gotta cut costs somewhere or share the costs somewhere if you're doing like multiple events per month. I'd say that I did at least 3 weekends at most in a month. So, you know, when you're sharing hotel rooms with people for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're not gonna find a lot of opportunity to watch porn and masturbate. Let's just put it at that. Now, before I go on with the story, son, here's a piece of advice. If you have trouble meeting women or getting to know women, then you need to learn to dance. I think that learning to dance was the most alpha move that I ever made, because it taught me confidence. Because what I believe in is that if you can lead a woman on the dance floor, you can lead her off the dance floor. And I would say that I never had any luck whatsoever with women before I started learning how to dance. And you know what? Things really changed when I got on the competition circuit, because you would be going out to all these different states on dance competitions, and you'd meet a lot of women. Though I would admit that I never got with many women from the dance circuit, mainly because of logistics. Usually they were from a different state, and when you're at a dance competition, you're actually communicating and getting to know a lot of different people, so you don't really spend the time to get to know someone more in depth. So you actually just meet them and you see them at the next competition, and that's basically it. There's really, I feel for me actually, never really the right time to actually get to the point where you invite them over and you guys visit each other in each other's home state. But there were like 1 or 2 that actually did fly over and visit me, but those visits were usually very casual. So yeah, it was a very sinful life I was living back then. So remember that at the time, even though I was spending my weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays at dance competitions, I still had 4 days out of the week where I was at home. That means during that time, I was still watching porn. I would say like 3 to 4 times per week, because those were the days where I was not traveling. And in addition to dance competitions, you know, I'd still go to bars on the weekend. And if I didn't travel for a weekend, then I'd go to bars or meet girls locally at events. And pro tip, if you are looking for a long-term partner, bars and most events, I would say, that are local are not the places you want to meet, or I feel will meet the right long-term partner. I'd go as far as to say anywhere where they might serve alcohol. So here's a shamefully embarrassing story that I hesitate to tell. So I invited a girl I met at one of these bars or local events over to my house. I think this was the second date. And I cooked us an amazingly delicious chicken pasta dinner. Poured out the red wine. We had that dinner over watching a movie together in the living room. And side note that the day before, I watched porn and masturbated. So back to the story, we were enjoying dinner, having a good glass of wine or two or three, and watching this movie. This was my first net time doing Netflix and chill. And so, things got handsy. It got hot, it got heavy while we were watching the movie. I turned off the TV, I lifted her up and I carried her over to my room. I got down on her, she got down on me, and I wasn't able to get it up. And then shame washed over me. Of course, I wasn't willing to admit what really happened. I blamed it on the wine, and she got dressed, she left, and I never saw her again. But ultimately, I knew what the problem was that caused erectile dysfunction. I really believe it was the porn and the masturbation that I did before that led to me not being able to perform. And here's the thing, I think that porn really does some brainwashing, because I remember that around that time I was pretty into some hardcore porn, and what we were doing and the masturbation and the porn that I watched the night before, it really just wasn't doing it for me, and I just wasn't able to get it up. So Houston, we have a problem. I was dealing with the shame of the incident for like 2 days. I was unable to sleep. The incident just kept replaying in my head. It was terrible. I just didn't know where to turn to for help. I just knew that this porn thing has become a really huge problem without me realizing it. So I realized that it was a problem. And the next thing I did was I said to myself, all right, I gotta stop this. I have to abstain. I think the longest I abstained from watching porn was like for 2 weeks. Who am I kidding? It was more than likely 1 week, because at that time I had no God and I had no willpower. So even that 1 week was really, really hard. So I tried abstaining over and over again, and every single time I failed. And you know what's worse than shame? It's having shame and being a lost soul. Because what abstaining meant to me was, abstaining meant making a promise to myself that I won't do certain actions. Now, the biblical definition of a covenant was an agreement between God and his people that God will fulfill a certain promise after his people made certain actions. So it's a promise, and I was making a covenant. I was making a promise with myself, but I'd break that promise to myself every single time. My promise to myself was, I'm going to get rid of this shame by not watching porn and masturbating. And every single time I made that promise, maybe a day later, 2 days later, a week later, I'd go back and relapse. Now, I don't know if you know this, but to me, when you break a covenant with yourself and you break that promise to yourself, shame multiplies. And you begin to trust in yourself a lot less. You start disliking yourself for not being able to get this problem that you have under control. And the light in your eyes gets dimmer. You start giving up on yourself and you start falling deeper. And when you get to the point when you start giving up on yourself, that's devastating. So up until that point, I would say that I didn't know what porn addiction was. I didn't know the effects that porn can have on your mental, physical well-being and the well-being of your soul. And to be honest, I would say that I didn't even know how the term porn addiction was defined until I would say this year, where I moved to Dallas. So I mentioned in previous videos that I really take personal development and self-improvement seriously. And it's one of the things that YouTube actually recommends to me a lot. And YouTube recommended to me this one video from Alex Becker, who is a big YouTuber, and he did this no-fap challenge, and I clicked on it. I was curious. That was a really good clickbaity thumbnail, and it was packaged really well, the video. And I watched through it, and I thought, this is such an interesting challenge. So I gave it a shot. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. African proverb. So the NoFap challenge gave me a lot of hope. And in hindsight, I think the reason why I always relapsed, why I always failed, why I always broke the covenant, the promises to myself that I would stop watching porn, I would stop jerking off, was because one, I had no God, and two, I had no community. But then there was this other guy documenting his journey of NoFap, and me realizing that I wasn't the only one. There was another guy, and looking at his comments, a ton of guys having the same struggles. And now I see that he is doing this successfully. Well, if he can do it, then I can do it too. And that is when I start getting excited. I found hope in myself. I wouldn't say that I successfully defeated porn addiction, because whenever I go on X, Instagram, or TikTok, the algorithm does serve a thoughty once and every blue moon. So right now I live in Dallas, Texas, and I moved down here from DC at the start of the year. And when people ask me, why did you move to Dallas? I would answer, because God directed me down here. And I had no reason other than that. And I didn't know why. But the second week when I moved to Dallas, a friend of mine that I met here during the first week actually invited me to his Christian men's group, which is kind of like a support group for men with talking about their struggles. And one reoccurring theme was porn addiction. I think that is where I learned what porn addiction really was and how many men suffered from it. And then and there, I realized that, I also suffer from this porn addiction. And I'm not the only one that faced it. And what I learned is that those of us that have or still have this problem, we have to find grace, and we have to find grace with ourselves first and foremost, and we have to find accountability with brothers or sisters that understand and can relate to the problems that we're facing. And I think that for a man, this is super hard, because there's a lot of shame that comes from admitting that you have a porn addiction problem. You want to portray yourself as a guy that has it all together. That is what the ego and the pride wants you to do. And I think that when we don't admit that we have a problem, that is when we are doing it alone. And look at how well it went for me when I tried to do it alone. So all in all, I think that God brought me down to Dallas in order to meet this group, to learn about this problem, to recognize that I myself have this problem, and to make this video to help those who might be silently suffering from the same problem. They're doing it alone like I was, and they're failing, devastated by the loss of trust that they have with themselves because they keep breaking promises to themselves. So I would say that if you are in the same situation and you need someone to talk to you, my DMs are always free. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. The link is down below in the comments. But if you have no one to talk to and you're afraid how people might respond, I know where you're coming from, and the DMs are always open. So, to be frank, I say that I haven't mastered my porn addiction. It is managed. That's why this title is How I Manage My Porn Addiction. The longest sobriety I've had with porn is 3 months, and that's just because I wanted to see if I can stay sober for a quarter, because there are 4 quarters in the years, and that's when companies usually report their quarterly earnings. I would say that 3 weeks ago I relapsed, and as of filming today, I've not looked at porn for 2 weeks. So that's where I'm at. I won't be the one to say that this is something that I mastered. I think the temptation is always there, and I think that is something that I would probably be managing for the rest of my life, but I want to get to the point, and I see myself progressing, that this is not something that is ruining my life. I'm starting to have control over it. So if you want to find someone who has mastered porn addiction, then I'm sorry to say that is not me. But I would say that what I have right now is different. Right now I have God, I have a community, I have brothers that support me. I know that the shame I used to carry alone is not something that I have to carry alone anymore. It is something that can be shared with the man upstairs and the brothers around me.